Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today for the second half of my interview with David Suich. David Suich is a near-death experience researcher who has studied thousands of near-death experiences over the course of 14 years. Part one of our conversation will be linked in the description. Today, he's going to cover a lot of the common questions that people ask him about near-death experiences, such as, do we see our pets on the other side? Which is the correct religion? And he's going to tackle the all-important question of the problem of suffering. Why do we suffer in this life? And he actually spends a pretty good amount of time on that question. David's links to his website and his book are in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Here's David.
Now, one of the common questions I get when I talk to people about near-death experiences is people have pets that they love and the pet has died and they say, do pets go to heaven? And I've heard various religions say, oh, no, only human beings have souls. And that's what I thought. That's what I was taught in Catholic school. Only human beings have souls. I lost count of how many testimonies people said they arrived in heaven and there was their former pet that died when they were young or a few years ago or whatever. And I mean, there must have been 20, 30, 40 testimonies like that I've heard. One guy was even shown a place where all these animals were playing. And he was told, every animal you've ever loved is there in heaven waiting for you. And they all play together and are happy while they're waiting for you. Now in heaven, you can appear any way you want. So in the natural form, you're kind of this sphere of energy, but you can appear with a body. And in the first level of heaven, people generally appear similar to their appearance on earth, although old age seems to be non-existent. So people appear to be in their 20s or 30s. One woman arrived and she said, I saw my grandmother there, but she didn't look like my grandmother. My grandmother had gray hair. She was hunched over, wrinkled skin. She had no teeth. I saw her in heaven and she was this beautiful 30-year-old woman with long dark hair and smiled and she had a white pearly teeth. Everybody who sees a relative or friend in heaven says they look the best they ever did. I mean, you look fantastic. And it's because you can look any way you want. So you tend to pick an appearance that's really good. So some of the people meet their pets as they were, and others meet them as this ball of energy. And you can communicate with your pets telepathically. So it's a wonderful thing. Now, the experience of heaven being there just really transforms people. But coming back can be quite difficult. After experiencing pure perfection, pure love, and coming back to this place, ooh, that is not fun at all. Some of the people become very depressed, chronically depressed. A few try and commit suicide, only to be told, to have a second near-death experience and be told, you are not to decide when you want to die. That is the only thing I hear in terms of God being stern. I never hear anything but God being the most loving, kind, compassionate, easygoing. You can say anything to him. The only time I ever hear him being stern is when somebody commits suicide. Apparently that is not for us to decide. So they get sent back and they say, well, Earth is a difficult place. We were meant to pass through these things. And it's part of the process of being down there. And just like running a triathlon, the purpose of running a triathlon is not to suffer. It's to challenge yourself. It's to build your muscles. It's to, maybe meet people that have similar likes. It's not to suffer, but suffering is going to be part of it. So when you choose Earth as an incarnation, it's going to include suffering. So they want us to endure the suffering with as much dignity and grace as possible. And if we don't, they understand. They understand that this is a very difficult place to be. Sometimes when near-death experiences are being brought towards heaven by an angel or a relative or whatever, they can sense their emotions, and their attitude towards us is like we would view a war hero, like a battle-hardened soldier who's been through a traumatic experience, but did this good thing. And some people ask about it, like, why are you looking at me that way? Or why do you think I'm some brave person? Well, the angels, they don't incarnate here. That's scary. You're going to disconnect from the love. You're going to disconnect from the peace and the safety. And you're going to incarnate into these fragile bodies and experience pain and loss and fear. You won't even know that you're part of God anymore. You'll be afraid to die. I mean, that's a horrifying experience. So to those on the other side of the veil, human beings are courageous. We're like daredevil souls. I mean, they just look at us and go, wow, those humans don't know how they do it, right? So that's kind of how they look at us. So coming back can be very difficult. People say when they get back into their body, if they were injured in an accident or, something going on in the hospital, immediately all the pain returns. It's very difficult. Just being back in your body, they say it's restrictive. They don't like the heavy feeling of gravity, but they eventually get used to it. And most adjust pretty well. Most, I would say, some get depressed. Most do not get depressed, because when you're in heaven, when you have that near-death experience, or even an out-of-body experience, Melissa, like you had, where you just feel that incredible love, it transforms you, and you come back with a renewed love, filled up with love for your fellow man. And again, there's generally a career change. Often there'll be a change in marital status. If the marriage continues, it continues in a completely different way, because this person has come back a completely different person. They're just not the same anymore. So the after effects, I think we talked about some of those. The people tend to become more loving. They tend to want to pursue serving humanity. It can cause problems with family and friends, because family and friends are used to getting all the attention. And when these people come back, they realize every person on earth is my brother and sister. We are one big family, and they want to give overwhelming, unconditional love to everybody. And sometimes a family members or a spouse gets jealous, but then they'll usually learn to put things back in balance. And it's difficulty adjusting again. So for anybody out there who's had a near-death experience watching this, it's just going to take time and patience. You'll get back into things eventually. Now, some people during their near-death experiences ask about religion. They want to know, is there a correct religion? And they'll say, which religion is the right religion or the best religion? And the answer is always the same. They say, well, the best religion is the one that brings you closest to God. So heaven is not invested in the dynamics of religious structure like we are. Generally, there are masters of the planet, and there have been many, Jesus and Buddha, and even I would consider somebody like Mother Teresa a master of the planet, who just came down here to show, the road of love and compassion. There's been many masters. And we tend to make religions out of their teaching, and then we can contaminate it a bit with our own thoughts and ideas and so forth. But that's okay. Heaven views religion sort of like as a tool, or maybe as a display of love. So if you're a parent, you may have a few children that show you affection and love in different ways. One may run up to you and hug you and say, I love you, mommy. And another one may want to help you wash the dishes. Another one may do you a drawing that says, I love you. And they all show their love in different ways. And, they could show all their love in the same way, but there's a certain beauty to have your children just expressing their love in different, unique ways. And that's beautiful to you as a parent, right? So the way God sees religion is he just sees all these different cultures honoring and connecting with him in their own ways. And each way is beautiful in its own aspect. And, I'm not talking about the extreme elements of some religions where they think it, we need to kill in the name of God. God doesn't care for that, but he's not expecting perfection. And I like to say that the active ingredient in any religion is love. So the analogy I like to use is Captain Cook's brew. So back in the 1700s, people would die from scurvy when on long voyages. They'd get on these ships and they'd work for years, and they wouldn't get fresh fruits and vegetables. So if you don't have vitamin C, you get scurvy. And Captain Cook had this brew that had sauerkraut and malt and vinegar and pepper and all sorts of horrible things. One of the ingredients was lemon syrup, which is loaded with vitamin C. The rest of the ingredients had little or no effect. And almost every major religion in the world has that active ingredient of love. They have so much in common. It's almost funny that, we fight so much in our religions trying to prove who's right. The only person really wasting their time in religion is the one who's going around telling everybody that theirs is wrong. The only person who's not climbing to the top of the mountain is the one running around saying, take only this path, those other paths are no good. No, there's a lot of paths up the mountain. So many religions believe in brotherly love. charity for the impoverished, forgiveness, gentleness, compassion, self-control, community, good behavior. I mean, the world's religions have so much in common. And even when mankind becomes enlightened and we're aware of more things, religion's not going to go away. It's just going to change, right? So the Catholic Church, 500 years ago was selling indulgences. Pay us money and we'll save your dead relative from hell. They don't do that anymore. They changed, they matured. So religions will continue to mature. And as they do, they're going to learn to honor each other. And that's really what it's all about, for these religions to honor each other. And I really think the way God views religion is the same way a parent would be if, imagine you're in a bitter divorce and your spouse gets custody of the kids when they're very young. And out of spite says, I'm taking them away from you. You're never going to see your kids again. And moves out of state and hides them. And you spend years looking for them. And in despair, you give up. And it's 10 years later, 15 years later, and now your kids are in their 20s and you've just given up hope. And one day the phone rings and it's them. And they say, we've been looking for you for a long time. We're here. We're in your neighborhood. Can we come and visit you? You're overjoyed, right? This is the best day of your life. Your long lost kids are coming to see you. So you go outside and wait, and there's a car coming down the street and it's them. Now, let me ask you something. Do you care what kind of car it is? Do you care if it's a broken down old car with a lot of problems and billowing smoke out the back end, or if it's a brand new car in perfect condition? You don't care. You're just happy your kids are coming to see you. God doesn't care if you're in this religion that's really good and got all the theology great and all the spirituality great, if it's got a bunch of messed up doctrines, and he doesn't care. He's just happy you're coming to see him and connect with him. And that's all they care about up there. So yeah, religion's just a tool, and it's okay if you don't use the tool. A lot of people connect spiritually without the tool religion, and that's okay too. God just wants to be with his family, and he doesn't care how you do it. So I think that brings us to the subject of who we are. Now, this was a tough one for me. Okay, so I had always been taught in Catholic school that God created us to worship him. So it's almost a sick thought, like, what is he? He's got some overblown ego and needs to be worshiped. What's going on there? No, God, your parents don't create their children to be worshiped by their children. That's ridiculous. Parents create children because they want a family. So the way I understand this works, and again, this is real hard to swallow, but I've heard it over and over and over again from near-death experiencers. So what happens is God takes a little piece of himself and kind of separates it, okay? And that separation can take place in the form of incarnating into physical life. And when that piece is separate, it can go through different experiences. When that soul is separate, it can go through different experiences. Now, it's not really separate. It's just the illusion of separateness. And because it has different experiences, it develops its own little unique personality or perspective. And now it's almost like God looking at another unique perspective of himself. Now, if you take this happening billions and billions and billions of times over, God is divided up into billions and billions and billions of little perspectives, all these little souls that are all seeing and getting to know the rest of the whole in their own unique way. So we are all little pieces of the infinite creator, exploring our own unique paths, and then getting to know and perceive other parts of that infinite creation and falling in love with all those other parts. So when they talk about praise music in heaven, people say they hear praise music in heaven sometimes, and it's not, oh, I am not worthy, I'm a sinner, please forgive me. There's no praise music like that. The praise music in heaven is everyone shouting out, every little perspective of God, every little facet shouting out to every other facet, I love you, you're amazing. They're shouting to each other, we love you. That's what praise is in heaven. So as these little individual pieces of God, and as having a task to develop and grow and develop in our own unique ways, one of the ways we do that is physical life. So we separate from source, we separate from our heavenly home, and we come down to these physical lives. Now, some near-death experiencers say there's a perfect plan and it's working itself out in its perfection. It doesn't seem like it from where I'm sitting. It seems pretty darn chaotic, but no, it's a perfect plan. So why is there suffering in the world? Well, what if there was an engineer who had a photographic memory and is super intelligent, and he learned everything there was to learn about Disneyland? Okay. He knows all the rides, every nut and bolt, all the names of the workers, everybody who works there and what they do, how long they've been working there, every machine, every ride, every pathway, every building, everything. This guy knows Disneyland inside and out, but he's never been there. A 10-year-old kid who's been to Disneyland in a way would know more than him. Now, if that guy goes to Disneyland, he's not really learning anything, but he's experiencing something. So we come down to these physical lives, not really to learn in a traditional sense, anything new. We come down to experience. So you can't really experience great food. If you've been eating great food all your life, you've been eating luxury meals all your life, your parents own a 5-star restaurant, you eat every luxury meal there since your birth, you don't know what lousy food is. To really appreciate the good food, you got to taste lousy food. And to appreciate love, to appreciate the universal consciousness, the beauty of God, you have to experience a disconnection from it. And then experience what it feels like to find it again. And that is a growth process that happens. So we come down here, we forget that we're part of God, we forget we're immortal, we forget that we're all powerful, and we pretend to be human. So sometimes I'll meet an atheist who says, I don't believe in that stuff, that your book and the stuff you talk about. I don't believe in that. What do you think about that? And I say, well, I think we have a lot in common. Well, what do you mean? I say, well, I believe the same thing you do. You believe we're human beings pretending that there's a God, and I believe we're little facets of God pretending to be human. We believe there's a lot of pretending going on. We just got to switch it around, right? So that's what we are. We're little facets of God pretending to be human beings. And it's a difficult place down here. I have heard many times that Earth, it comes a shock, there are many places to incarnate in this galaxy. Our galaxy is full of life. The universe is full of life. People have asked about that. First near-death experience I ever heard, the guy said, are we alone in the universe? And they said, no, the universe is full of life, and there are other universes with other dimensions that are also full of life. So Earth is the most difficult planet in this entire galaxy to incarnate into. Think about what that means. Okay, we got 100, well, we don't know how many stars, 100 billion to 400 billion stars in this galaxy alone. And the galaxy is a pinpoint of light in the universe. It's also one of the most difficult, not the most difficult, but one of the most difficult planets in the entire universe to incarnate into. I mean, if you're struggling right now with something, you're going through a hard time and just having real difficulty maintaining joy and happiness, and a lot of people out there are struggling with depression or financially just to survive, this is a hard place to be. If you came to Earth, you are like the Green Beret or the Navy SEALs. If you took sort of the best group of those guys, that's what the people incarnating onto Earth is. It's like the best of the daredevil souls are coming to this planet. I mean, it's a really difficult place to be. It's also a place where you learn really fast. I mean, when you're trying to grow spiritually, you don't even have to incarnate. You can do it in heaven, but it's almost like if I have to walk from here to somewhere 3 miles away, I have a choice of how I want to do it. I can take a leisurely walk and it's going to take me a long time, but it's going to be pleasant. I'm not going to suffer much. I can get there fast if I run or sprint, but I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to suffer a lot. When you go through the fast learning course, the fast track course, there's going to be suffering as a natural part of it. Earth is the quick learning. It's the progress in huge leaps and bounds really fast. And I like to call a lot of the people, the kind of people who'd be attracted to listening to a video like this, you're the light workers. You're the ones on Earth who are aware of what we're doing down here, aware of, spreading love and compassion and dealing with the fear love duality that we have on this planet. So that's what we're doing. We're dealing with this fear love duality. So disconnect from God, you feel fear, and then you got to find that love again in the midst of the fear. And when you exercise that spiritual muscle, just like when a weightlifter, lifts that weight, when you're going back and forth between that fear and love duality, it exercises your spiritual muscle and it grows your consciousness. And from what I understand, we human beings who incarnate into physical lives like this, they're really difficult. We and all the others in creation that incarnate into physical lives, especially difficult ones, we are the engine of growth of God. We are on the outside of the fractal, sort of the pioneers of growth. So, it's an important job. Some people think, oh, I'm nobody, I'm worthless. Like, yeah, you wouldn't say that if you could see your spiritual self. You'd have a problem with arrogance. We'd have to get you humble if you really understood who you were and how amazing you are. So every human being we see is a part of God. And that is one of the reasons that it's so important to spread unconditional love to everybody that we meet, especially the ones where our ego tells us they don't deserve it. When you bring hope or joy to just one soul, just one person, it elevates all of humanity. If every human being on Earth tomorrow was in the light that we talked about earlier for just 3 seconds, and they experienced that love and then came back, instantaneously, the homeless and everybody who is too old, sick, weak, or unwilling to care for themselves and has been forgotten by society, all those people would be swarmed instantaneously. That's the low-hanging fruit. With very little effort and very little money, we could drastically improve the quality of their lives and help them. And that brings us to our next discussion of what's happening on Earth right now. It doesn't take much looking around to see that we're living in a world of chaos and disorder, and it seems to be getting worse, right? Well, there has been a battle going on for a long time down here on Earth, is the fear-love duality. So there's a battle between the service of self and the service to others, basically selfishness and altruism. And the altruism is eventually going to win out, but there's this back and forth right now. And there's some very wealthy, powerful forces. There's big corporations and big government that are taking away freedoms. And there's a lot of abuse and manipulation. There's a lot of people going around causing chaos. There's more and more division. The dance of consciousness is always one of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And we're in a step back right now. And this is just like a person, let's say a woman who's in an abusive relationship, and the husband's getting worse and worse and worse and drinking more and beating her even worse until finally she says, I had enough, I'm leaving. So the situation is going to get worse and worse and worse until we say that's enough, it's got to change. So it's like if your family lived in a big house and this house was in your family for generations and generations and generations, but now the wood is rotting and the electrical's faulty and the plumbing is leaking and the roof is done for. And when it rains inside the house. It's just falling apart. You can't patch it up anymore. And you decide, I got to bulldoze it and make way for something new. The day you're standing there and watching your house get bulldozed, it's going to seem like the end of the world, but it's anything but. It's making way for a new beginning. So all this chaos that we're seeing in this world, all this division, all the horrific things, the war and everything that's happening is actually old systems and old ways of doing things falling apart. Now, many near-death experiences have been shown the future. And for a while, it was uncertain, but somewhere, as near as I can tell, in the late 80s or maybe early 90s is when we kind of passed the point of no return. We were on a road to destroy ourselves. Okay, so every planet in the universe with intelligent life either learns to live with each other and nature in harmony and cooperation, and they become an ascended species, or they destroy themselves through a combination of war and environmental disasters. We were on that second path. The United States and Soviet Union had the weapons pointed at each other. We had the consciousness to do it. And thanks to a lot of help from above, we averted it. So we are now on a path to becoming an ascended species. The very good prediction of revelation of doomsday, that was a real thing. That was averted. That's not going to happen. So I've heard it over and over again. There's not going to be an Armageddon. There's going to be no sudden mass extinction of human beings. We're not going to, kill ourselves off. We're going to make it now. But we just passed the point of no return. And we're just like that 2-year-old who's finally learning, maybe I shouldn't be punching the other 2-year-old in the sandbox. We're just starting to mature. And it's going to take a while to work things out. So I understand the first thing that's going to happen is eventually there's going to be peace on Earth. We're going to stop fighting. When that happens, we won't really need a military budget anymore. I mean, if you took 20% of the military budget and put it towards the homeless, that would be about 15 to 20,000. No, it'd be more than that. It'd be about $25,000 per homeless person per year. You can work out the numbers. So a bunch of things will happen right away when we start cooperating and stop competing and fighting each other. A new paradigm will arrive. And the new paradigm is this: there is enough for everybody. With 1950s technology, right, with mass manufacturing, we have the technology to manufacture all the food, clothing, housing. We can do medical care. We can do all that for every person on Earth and have a 10-hour work week and plenty of time left over if we just cooperate. And it's going to happen. And according to near-death experiencers, they don't have an exact timeline. It depends on how much we want to suffer. How fast do you want to run to get to where you're going, right? In about 150 years. So peace on Earth will be the first step, and then things will really get going. And then we'll become an ascended planet, and we will eventually seed life on another planet. That's the end game. And then we'll take care of them and get them to kind of grow and mature in the same way. So the new world of love is coming. And the best thing we can do from our earthly lives here is when we see all the chaos around us, to just know that our future is bright, that the suffering's for a reason. Nothing happens without a reason. Everything that happens is bringing us towards a higher plane of existence, the place we want to go to. So just, I try and do my best to be loving and kind to the people around me. I fail a lot. I'll be the first one to admit that, but I still keep trying to do my best. And I like to recommend as well that you turn off the news. The news is nothing more than a well-crafted fear report. If you count the negative stories, it's like 85%. And if there's nothing negative, they kind of spin something to make it negative, right? It's usually going to be misinformation, and it's usually going to be negative. And a human brain, a human consciousness was not meant to take on the suffering and pain and drama of an entire planet. So I like to recommend to people to just pay attention to your own life and the people around you. How is your world? Are there any wars in your world? Are there mass killings in your world? Probably not. Maybe a few people listening to this are in areas where there are, and that's very sad. But most people, if you look at only your world, it's pretty good. My world is pretty peaceful. I've never seen a murder. I've never seen somebody die in a car. I've never seen any of those things. People are generally nice to me. I mean, if you watch the news, you think it's just a horrible world. And we're creator gods. See, we're part of the all-powerful creator. So what we think and what we say, that's something near-death experiences say all the time. Words have power, thoughts have power because they create. So if we're focused on this negativity, it creates more of it. If you're focused on the good things in your life, and focused on the things you're grateful for, and especially if you speak it out loud so that your ears hear it and your brain hears it, that's going to literally cause the creation process to bring more of that good stuff, towards us when we do that. So anyway, that's about it.
Quickly before we go, I'll just have you let people know where they can get in touch with you and where they can find your book.
Okay, well, you can get in touch with me on my website at godtookmyclothes.com. My email and phone number are there. And my book, I think there's links to it on the website. It's $11 for the paperback and $5 for the ebook. Now, life isn't all about money. You give me money because I want to have more money. So if you want the book and you just having a hard time financially, you just don't want to spend the money, send me an email and I'll send you a free PDF copy. It's an Adobe Acrobat format. And if you speak Spanish, I have the full PDF copy up on the website that you can download. There's also a preview version of the book that you can download to read the first few chapters. So the spiritual counseling I do as well. I'm not super busy right now. So if you need spiritual counseling, but just can't afford it, I'll give you some free sessions. Again, we're all here to help each other, and we're all here for each other's understanding, compassion, and love. And so I want to do my part to that.